So are you ready?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Could you explain the concept of OOP and its core principle?
Uh, in OOPS basically stands for Object-Oriented Programming, and
Divakar, can you
basically it has
turn on
four
your
pillars.
camera?
Sure, sir. 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Am I visible, sir?
Yeah, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. So basically, OOPS has four pillars. The first one is inheritance, encapsulation, abstraction, and polymorphism. So, in inheritance, basically we can understand that one class inherit properties of another class. So, we can understand it from a real life example, like a child inherits some properties from their parents, like the color of their hair or the color of their eyes. And second pillar is polymorphism. Polymorphism means many forms. So we use a single method in different ways in polymorphism. Another is encapsulation. So in encapsulation, we generally bind many things into a single unit. Like we bind multiple variables and method into a single unit. And class is the best example of encapsulation. And finally, abstraction. Uh, in abstraction, we generally show the major details and hide the implementation part. For example, for driving a car, we don't need to know how its engine works. So we only need to drive the car. So this is a perfect example of encapsulation. This is it, sir.
Okay. Well explained. Now let's deep dive into some front-end technologies. So on a scale of 1 to 10,
Okay.
how would you rate your proficiency in CSS?
In CSS, I would rate myself 8 out of 10.
Okay. Now let's proceed to the next question. Can you explain the difference between margin and padding in CSS?
Sure, sir. So basically, we can say the margin in case of suppose we have like a box model. So the outermost layer can be understood as the margin, or we can say it's the area around a content. And in case of padding, padding is basically the area between the border and the content.
Okay. So my next question is, what is the difference between visibility hidden and display none in CSS?
Uh, Sir, there is basically a major difference is that in case of visibility hidden, generally a box gets hidden, so it's become invisible, but the space occupied by that particular element doesn't get dissipated. For example, we have suppose we have three divs, they are aligned in a row. So there is first div on its right, there is second div, and there is third div on its right as well. So all these divs are in a row, and suppose we apply property hidden, visibility hidden property to the middle div. So we will see that the div number 2 will get disappeared, but the div 3 will be on its place, and the div 2 place won't be occupied. So we will see that div 1 is on its place, div 2 place would be empty, but and div 3 place would be where it was. So it doesn't occupy the space of div 2. But if we apply display none property to div 2, in that case we will see that div 1 is on its place, but div 3 had moved slightly towards div 1. It has taken the space of div 2. So this was the difference between visibility hidden and display none.
That's a good explanation. Now let's shift our focus to
Thank you.
JavaScript. So
Uh,
what is the difference
sure, sir.
between double equal and triple equals to in JavaScript? Do you know?
Basically, double equals to is a comparison operator. it only checks the values. Suppose I have one double equals to string one. In that case, it will give true because it only checks the values, not the type. But in case of triple equals to, it will check the value as well as type. Suppose I give number one
Okay, okay,
triple
okay.
equals to string one, it will give me
Correct,
false.
correct. So, can you explain the difference between set timeout and set interval?
Basically, set timeout is used to execute a code after some delay. Suppose I have given a delay of 1 second, so it will execute the code after 1 second. But in case of a set time interval, it will work similarly. It will execute the code after 1 second, but it will continuously execute the code. So suppose I have a code of printing hello in set time interval. So after 1 second, it will continuously print hello. That's it.
Okay. Now, what are the advantage of using React in front-end development? Have you used React?
Yes, I have used React in front end. So
Okay.
basically, if I talk about the advantages, then React is faster comparison to other frameworks because it uses the concept of virtual DOM.
Okay, tell me, React is a framework or library?
Basically, React is a library.
Okay, then continue.
Okay. So another advantage could be like JSX. So in React, we generally use JSX. JSX stands for JavaScript and XML. It actually gives us the power to write HTML code inside the JavaScript. So basically, this use of JSX makes the component more readable. And another advantage of using React is one-way data binding. So data is generally passed from the parent component towards the child component. So this is data one-way data binding. And another advantage of one-way data binding is that it makes the debugging very easy for us. And that's it, sir.
Okay, so as you know React also, so what is the difference between state and props?
Difference between state and props. Uh, so basically, state can be understood as an internal storage of a React component. It is generally stores the internal data of a component. But props are generally used to pass data from the parent component towards the child component. And if we talk about the states, then states are mutable, but the props are not mutable.
Okay,
That much I know, sir.
okay, that's good. So can you suggest an alternative to context API in React? Have you
Basically,
used that?
I have used context API, but majorly I suggest React. So React is another alternative to context API.
What are React hooks?
React hooks, basically React hook are used to achieve lifecycle method in functional components. Basically, we know that basically there are two type of component in React. One is class component and second is functional component. In class component, we have some essential method known as lifecycle methods, which we use. But in case of functional component, we don't have this lifecycle method. So we use React hooks over there to achieve the lifecycle methods like use state, use.
So how many React hooks have you used in your project?
I have used many hooks like
So
mostly I use state hook to create a state and use context as well. I have used to create a context, and apart from it, I have used use router,
okay.
and that's much all I remember currently.
So what is the purpose of use effect hook?
Used effect hook in React is basically used to achieve mm life cycle method. Basically, there are three life cycle method like component did mount, component did update, and component will unmount. So these three life cycle methods, when we want to achieve, we can achieve through use effect.
So Which hook do we use to call an API in React, and what
Basically,
would could be its dependencies?
we use the use effect hook only to call an API, and the dependency could be any of the state which get updated whenever we call an API. I want, suppose I have a form, and in that form I generally have like three input fields and one add button. So whenever I fill all these fields and press the add button, the data should go to the API. And in response, API should give me some data, and that data should get up and stored into some state. So that particular state in which the data of API, the response of API is being stored, that state should be put as a dependency in the use effect, so that if whenever the API data get updated, new data comes, then that new data should be re-rendered to the component. So that should be the dependency.
What is Redux and why it is used? And when do we use Redux?
Basically, as I say, Redux is an alternative for context API. So Redux is basically used to manage a global state, and all the components in the React have access to this state, this store. So Redux basically used to manage multiple, when we have multiple states and we want to manage all of them, then we generally use Redux. And React Redux has some method, like it has a action, it has a reducer, and finally it has a store.
So
So
all these
these all
concepts
things about Redux.
as you have used in your projects.
Yeah, I have used this concept in a project.
So